Most of you have probably heard of the Library of Alexandria and the story of its destruction. But what was the library actually like at its peak? How did it function? And how much of its famous demise is actually true? In this video, we'll explore all of that and more through the lens of Civilization VI. The Great Library, also commonly known as the Library of Alexandria, was the largest and most significant library of the ancient world. Founded in the port city of Alexandria in Egypt, most likely during the reign of Ptolemy I Soter, and expanded under his successors, it aimed to collect all the knowledge of the known world in a single place. Scholars from across the Mediterranean were invited to study there, and texts were gathered, copied, and preserved on a massive scale. From philosophy to mathematics, every form of knowledge would be present within its halls. So how does Civilization VI treat this ancient wonder? In Civilization VI, the Great Library provides the following bonuses: +2 science, +1 great scientist point per turn, +2 great works of writing slots, boosts to all ancient and classical era technologies, +1 great writer point per turn, and a random technology boost whenever another player recruits a great scientist. Okay, so these are a lot of effects, but I'm happy to say that they all make sense and are relevant to the wonder's history. An important thing to get out of the way first, before we explain its bonus, is that the Library of Alexandria was not exactly a library in today's sense of the word. It was an active center of research, arguably the largest of the ancient world. Scholars from all over the Mediterranean and the Middle East were working there to both produce and preserve knowledge. The Science Guild and the Great Scientist Point are a very straightforward translation of the library's accumulated knowledge in all things scientific. Some of the greatest minds of the world either worked there or were closely associated with the institution. Euclid worked in Alexandria, and Archimedes is known to have studied there, while Eratosthenes calculated the circumference of the Earth in the city. It is really difficult to overstate how many ideas and scientific output were created in Alexandria during its golden age. This also helps to explain the tech boost that all ancient and classical technologies receive when a player constructs the Great Library, since its presence undeniably led to countless scientific breakthroughs. Unlocking the wonder in-game essentially means your civilization has gained access to a concentrated record of everything humanity had figured out so far, which is about as clean a mechanical translation as you could ask for. The other bonus regarding tech boosts, however, is a bit more interesting. From the moment a player builds the Great Library, they receive a random technology boost whenever another player recruits a great scientist. This is a bit of an unusual bonus, but it can be tied very nicely to the actual history of the wonder. The Library of Alexandria was in many ways a scientific hub for its age. The purpose for which it was built was to concentrate all possible knowledge that was present at the time into one place. This meant that every researcher had a really big incentive to travel to Alexandria, to do research, but to also interact with other intellectuals. This meant that the library was deeply connected to the wider world of science, a place where ideas flowed through effortlessly, each one contributing to an ever-expanding pool of knowledge. I find the way that Civ VI abstracts this information to work very well. When someone somewhere makes a discovery, your civilization benefits from it, because the Great Library provides you the infrastructure to absorb and build upon that information. The last set of bonuses have to do with writing, and are also well-founded. The library was not purely a scientific institution. It housed vast collections of poetry, drama, and philosophy, and the scholars who worked there produced literary and critical work alongside their scientific output. The Ptolemaic kings were also known to pursue original manuscripts aggressively, allegedly requiring all ships docking in Alexandria to surrender any scrolls on board for copying, oftentimes keeping the originals and returning the copies. A little bit ruthless maybe, but very effective if your goal is to build the greatest library in the world. In any case, the great works of writing slots reflect that obsessive accumulation of literary and cultural texts. The +1 great writer point per turn is also well justified. The Library of Alexandria played a major role in the development of literary criticism. Scholars like Aristophanes of Byzantium and Aristarchus of Samothraki worked on editing, organizing, and analyzing some of the most important works of Greek literature. They introduced things like punctuation systems, textual comparison, and detailed commentary, shaping how texts were read and understood. This kind of work shaped literary scholarship for centuries, and Civilization VI reflects that by tying the wonder to great writer generation, representing a place where literature was studied, interpreted, and developed further. The wonder requires the recorded history civic. It is true that civilizations had been recording history for thousands of years before the construction of the Great Library. However, one of the main purposes of the Library of Alexandria was to collect and catalogue all these texts into one place. Callimachus was an ancient Greek poet who was active in the library. One of his greatest accomplishments was the creation of the Pinakes, a comprehensive catalogue listing all of Greek literature up to that point. The Pinakes are considered to be the first library catalogue in the West, and the most famous of them organized works by author and subject, a model that would then spread to the rest of the Mediterranean and would influence how libraries were organized for centuries. Sadly, as with most works of the Great Library, only fragments of the Pinakes remain. The wonder must be built on flatland adjacent to a campus with a library. The Great Library was not an isolated building. It was part of a much larger intellectual complex, the Museum, an institution dedicated to the Muses, where scholars lived, worked, and conducted research. This included lecture halls, study spaces, and collections that extended beyond a single structure, with additional storage later housed in places like the Serapeum when the main library ran out of space. Requiring the wonder to be next to a campus points to the fact that the Great Library was the centerpiece of a larger infrastructure focused on the acquisition and preservation of knowledge. I will say that, as with the Colosseum, I do not enjoy the requirement of a library being present in the city. I have been over this in that video, and it will come up again in the future, so I'm just noting it here briefly. The Civ V Great Library provides a free library in the city, which is way better in my opinion.
We can roam the bloated stacks of the Library of Alexandria, where all imagination and knowledge are assembled. We can recognize in its destruction the warning that all we gather will be lost.
The in-game quote comes from Alberto Manguel, an Argentine-Canadian writer and one of the most prominent authors on the history of reading and libraries. The quote is from his book, The Library at Night. He mentions the Library of Alexandria as a symbol of collected works, one that carries a warning about the fragility of accumulated knowledge. The destruction of the library, whenever and however it actually happened, has become one of the defining cultural anxieties of Western civilization, a reminder that nothing that is gathered is guaranteed to survive. And on that note, the destruction of the library is itself one of history's most debated questions. There was no single catastrophic burning, despite what popular imagination tends to suggest. The library declined gradually, through a combination of underfunding, political instability, and a series of damaging events spread across several centuries. Julius Caesar's fire in the harbour in 48 BCE, the decree of Theophilus in 391 AD, and the Arab conquest of Alexandria in 642 AD have all been blamed at various points, but historians largely agree that the reality was a slow erosion rather than a single moment of loss. The dramatic image of a great fire consuming the sum of human knowledge in one night is a powerful one, but it seems to be more myth than history. What remains true, however, is that the amount of texts that were destroyed, decayed, or went missing is enormous, and the consequences of that loss are very real. Records suggest that thousands of books that were housed in the library have been lost forever. Overall, the Great Library is one of the more complete wonder designs in Civilization VI. Its bonuses cover science, literature, and the broader abstraction of knowledge, which maps well onto what the Library of Alexandria actually was. An institution that shaped the intellectual output of the ancient world and tried to preserve countless amounts of ancient texts and discoveries. All in all, I believe the designers did a great job at translating this ancient wonder in terms of Civ VI's gameplay.